Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm reviewing the movie Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, because it was on TV last night and I didn't really have anything else to do. I did promise you guys that during this rather dry season of the summer that I'd try and step up and do more movie reviews, so this is me trying to keep my promise on that, and I will get out at least one more movie review this week. Anyway, getting into this movie itself. Now, I haven't seen the first Robert Downey Jr. Jude Law Sherlock Holmes movie. I'm starting here with the sequel, so I don't really feel, that being the case, that I'm really qualified to talk too awful much about characterization. So mostly I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I thought about the plot and the movie in general. And overall, this movie is rated 3 stars, and I think that's a fair rating. It's an alright movie, but I really wouldn't call it a great movie. It's not a movie that I would be in any particular rush to sit down and watch again. And this is one of those movies that, while there's certainly good things going on, it's really just a case of, hey, Robert Downey Jr. is a really good actor. He's good at playing very eccentric characters. I mean, this is basically one of those movies where they take a lead actor who's very talented, wind him up, and just sort of let him go nuts. With, some Sherlock Holmes trappings thrown in. I guess at the end of the day, this is a movie that's really a lot more style over substance. And there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, but it's Sherlock Holmes. You tend to want a little something that really makes you spark up here. I guess my biggest problem with this whole thing is that if you're going in to a Sherlock Holmes story, generally you want there to be a mystery to solve. And it's okay, what is Professor Moriarty up to this time? They make that very upfront. But the problem is, the main thrust of what Moriarty is up to is exceptionally easy to figure out. Now, there's some, flashy plot-related stuff that, elaborate games and things that do come into play, basically, but it's Moriarty's ends are easy to figure out. His means are a little bit more complicated. But I don't really like quote-unquote mystery movies where you really don't have a genuine chance to figure out what's going on. I guess what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. This is a book I'm reading right now, and it's in a series by an Australian author by the name of Gary Corby, and it's about this guy named Nico, and long version short, he's a detective in ancient Athens, in ancient Greece. So they don't have this, any sort of crime-solving technology. And there's no real established methodology for solving murders and things like that. And there's also the fact that he sort of stumbles into this by accident. He's actually the son of a sculptor with no real training in solving murders at all. But the thing about this is that in order to solve these cases, Nico just does what he does. He goes out there, he talks to people, he asks questions, he sits down and thinks about it. He goes to talks to people who know more about certain things than he does, and then he's like, "Oh God," or "Oh Zeus," or whatever, and then he runs off. And basically, you're going along with the guy, and you unravel the mystery alongside him. And what good mystery stories do in my book is they present you with the clues that you need to figure out the case, and a lot of the times it's either you're there along with the detective trying to figure it out at the same time, or it's a case of can you figure out what's going on before the detective does. And this movie doesn't really offer that. It's just a case of they go somewhere, there's an action scene, there's Robert Downey Jr. being goofy for a while, and then some fairly weak plot device comes along, and then it's off to the next very cleverly filmed action scene. And more of Robert Downey Jr. being quirky and charming and generally a very likable actor. And that's all well and good, but again, it just comes across as being more style over substance. And I feel a little bit bad for Jude Law here. He does have a sequence on the train, which is where his character of Watson is, in fact, pretty awesome. And Watson does get a pretty sweet Ravenclaw scarf at one point during the movie, and does have a nice hat and a cool dog. But still, it's just, it just doesn't really feel like Watson is really a significant player for a lot of the movie. Now, granted, there are plot reasons for this, but you want in a Sherlock Holmes movie, one of the big things that you need to have is Sherlock Holmes and Watson working on the case together. And again, if you sort of it's one of those things that if you could change up the formula and that's fine, but if you change things too much, it doesn't feel like a good Sherlock Holmes story. And let me see. Yeah. One of the complaints I had was Irene Adler is not a big part of the movie. Don't really have a whole lot to say about her since, again, I haven't seen the first movie. But the woman that sort of takes up the obligatory spunky female role in the movie, who's some French gypsy lady, I couldn't even be bothered to remember her name because I just didn't care. There was very little going on here that made me care about this woman as a character. Now, granted, there was also some other nice stuff, like the guy they have playing Moriarty. His name escapes me at the moment. I mean, he does a really nice he does a really nice job with that. Moriarty is really creepy and charming, and you really does project a very good sense of being this really dark opposite to Sherlock Holmes. And I really always enjoy those characters, those moments in fiction where you see, heroes dealing with their evil counterparts, as it were. And where both the hero and villain sort of acknowledge that, yeah, actually, we are very similar people in many ways. I mean, to me, that's always just really, really interesting to see. But, again, I really can't think of any better way to put it in that while there's, certainly some funny moments. There's a lot of Robert Downey Jr. being quirky. Again, the guy that plays Moriarty is really good. There's more style than there is substance, and that's just, in my book, the wrong way to go with a Sherlock Holmes story. So overall, again, if you're just looking for a movie to kind of kill a couple of hours on a slow night like I was last night, then this is certainly a perfectly good movie for that. If you're more looking for a good mystery story, or just something more in the more traditional interpretations of Sherlock Holmes, then this might not be what you're looking for. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time. Until next time, take care and have a good one.